Hey guys, thank you for joining us. We'll just give it a couple of minutes for people to join, and then we'll get started. So while we're waiting, let me announce the mentee for the AMA. The code is 990734. If you guys want to get in there and begin asking questions, that's 990734. I'm being told that there's people typing in the chat, but I don't see a chat. Kind of the first time I've done this, so. We'll give it another minute and then we'll get started. All right, let's begin. So, first things first, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I'm looking forward to a very productive session. I'm looking forward to answering a lot of your questions, and we have a special demo, a live demo again for you guys, and hopefully you like what we've prepared for you today. So first things first, I want to talk about fraud. There's a lot of fraudsters out there, and I certainly don't want you guys to have your, to get hurt or to have your money taken from you. So the only, the only real Telegram groups are Sparkster News, which is our announcement channel, and Sparkster ICO, which is the group, the chat group. Anything else is fake. The only legitimate website is sparkster.me. Anything else like sparkster.tech is fake. My request to you guys is, please, there is there's an announcement group called Sparkster Official. They are not official. Please, can you report them to Telegram, because we want them taken down. They are scamming people out of money, and collectively, if we could come together and take these guys down so that people are protected, right? So going over the agenda for today, where a lot of people have joined us. So we've had a very successful week, as some of you know. Our group has almost doubled in size since last Friday, which is remarkable, right? Certainly more than I expected. So I want to spend some time today, at the beginning of our call today, kind of covering the basics of what is Sparkster, what's Sparkster about, how can we make these claims, and why are we different? I want to cover that stuff. What's the problem we're solving? Why does the world need another blockchain, right? Why do we need such a fast or such a high throughput blockchain for software, right? Why can't we use some of the existing solutions? So I want to cover some of that for the people that have joined us that are new to Sparkster. Then we're going to jump into a demo. We're going to do another transaction test of the Sparkster Decentralized Cloud. I'm also going to show you something else, which is essentially how an application finds data on the network. And then we're going to talk about the crowd sale structure, and then finally we'll open up to questions, right? So I'd like to keep this pretty short. I know you guys, it's the middle of your day and you've got stuff going on, so I want to try and keep this to hopefully around 30 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, and let's see how we do. So let's get started. So what is Sparkster, and why does the world need Sparkster? So let me tell you kind of where we came from and where we started from. Over the last 15 years, I've been building businesses, and those businesses that I've been building, I've been responsible for software teams. I've been leading and kind of coordinating the development and implementation of software in these organizations. Now, it's diverse environments, e-commerce environments, factories, and so forth, right? But one of my greatest challenges in building businesses actually has been working with software developers. And the reason that that's the case is because when I take a business problem to them and I describe a solution to that business problem, what I'm describing and what they're understanding don't tend to be the same thing, right? They have a technical way of understanding what I'm saying, and then we end up with a different, something that's a little bit different to what I had originally described. So then you spend weeks or months kind of going from what they built to what we actually need. And one day, out of frustration in this, repetitive cycle, this iterative process, I said, guys, there's got to be a better way to do this, right? Give me the tools and I'll do this myself, quicker, faster, easier, without having to document what I need so that you guys can misunderstand my documentation, right? So we later discovered that this is actually a common problem in all companies all over the world, right? IT departments build software, line of business people, the people running the company, tend to have this problem with IT people. So there was clearly a problem, and giving the tools of software development to the average person, the 99% that cannot code, seems very valuable, right? So how do we make that happen? Well, we embarked upon a vision that if people can use a spreadsheet, then they should be able to build software, right? The ability to define the business logic is all you should need to be able to do. And the architecture of the software, the architecture of the platform should take care of everything else, right? So we spent 4 years and about $8 million building this product. During this process, we discovered blockchain, right? And one of the things that we saw about blockchain immediately was how it empowers people, how it puts people in control of their own destiny in so many ways. So we were looking at blockchain and kind of researching blockchain, looking at white papers and such, trying to understand the technology and kind of what's going on. And at the same time, you could say, we were looking for a powerful problem, right, that we could immediately address with the development of our platform. And it seemed like building software and building technology for the blockchain space was very, very difficult, right? You need specialized programmers that know specialized languages. The vast majority of software developers, right, that aren't familiar with blockchain architecture and such. So we found what felt like a very real problem that we felt we could help solve. So when we looked at this problem, we said, okay, we want to help people build software. And if they're going to run that software on the decentralized cloud, right, essentially what Sparkster's blockchain is, right? Well, how does that work? Like, what do we need? So because blockchain adoption, blockchain technology is difficult, right? It's very difficult. I mean, the mainstream has not adopted blockchain. This is a real problem. This is a real problem for our industry. How do we make that happen? Well, we make it easy for them to be able to build applications, right? And then we make it cost effective. We make it cheaper than traditional cloud computing. So how does that work? Well, think about traditional cloud computing from a company like Microsoft or Amazon or somebody else, right? They're paying for buildings, they're paying for servers, they're paying for cooling, they're paying for diesel generators, they're paying for UPS, they're paying for security personnel, they're paying for maintenance personnel. Well, if you were running, software for a company on a mobile phone, right? Would you be paying any of those costs? You wouldn't. And because you're not paying any of those costs, the cost at which you can provide cloud services to enterprises all over the world is significantly cheaper than Amazon and AWS. And that is why we believe that Sparkster is a credible way for the world to adopt blockchain technology. So that's the core problem, right? That's the crucible that we're kind of striking at. Right? The problem we're addressing is it's too difficult to build software. It takes too long, especially blockchain software and especially blockchain, stuff to run on the blockchain. And if we can empower the community and reward them for contributing their devices while also making, a decentralized cloud significantly cheaper than traditional cloud computing, we have a win-win for everybody. And that's when we changed our focus and said, this is the way we need to go, and we need to direct our efforts. So we quietly began working on, figuring out this blockchain stuff, right? And today, here we are. We have a credible solution that can achieve really, really high TPS. Now, that's important. That's really important. Why do we need high TPS? This is a question I sometimes get asked. Well, think about software, right? I mentioned this in the last AMA, right? You're on Amazon's website or whatever you're doing, right? You're on Amazon's website. You add 10 products to your cart. Those are 10 software transactions. While you may only pay once for that order, right? When you add 10 items to your cart, you've got 10 transactions. There are significantly more transactions in software than there are in payments. So we do need significantly more, significantly higher TPS. Now, if we're going to have the world adopt, our vision, a decentralized cloud, then this decentralized cloud needs to have really high TPS, right? Otherwise, they're going to come along and their transactions are going to take forever, and they'll leave. This won't take off. So high TPS is necessary. So how we do this is unique. And sometimes I get asked the question, well, a lot of people have been working on this problem, Ethereum and Zilliqa and, EOS and a bunch of other people, right? Like, how is it that they haven't solved this problem, but you guys claim to have solved this problem? The answer is really simple. We're a specialized blockchain. That means we solve one problem and one problem alone very well, and that is how to run software at really high transaction rates, right? Really high TPS, right? So we're going to talk about something called natural isolation boundaries that exist in software and why that lends itself to our specific architecture. You wouldn't use this architecture for payment transactions. This is specifically designed. It's a specific blockchain for cloud computing because that's the problem we're solving. Okay, so let's move on. I want to move on to a demo. We're going to show you essentially something that we put out yesterday in a video, which shows about 15,000 transactions a second. We're going to show you a demo and hopefully exceed 15,000 transactions a second. But this time we're doing it live for you guys to see on air. So I'm going to switch over and hopefully you can see the demo of our team. Now, let me explain to you before they start what you're looking at. So we have from yesterday, if you compare the video we released yesterday to today this is a much bigger setup. And so we had to automate how those transaction generators get started. We've built an interface to control those transaction generators. And that's on the left-hand side. And they're basically causing those transaction generators to start. And all those transaction generators, by the way, they're all located on different machines. And then on the right-hand side, you're looking at different cells, right? Now, these cells, they make up our blockchains. Each cell is a blockchain. There's consensus, specifically SCP, Stellar Consensus Protocol, going on in every one of these cells, in every one of these blockchains, right? Now, what they're going to do is they're going to start firing transactions at the network, and we are going to watch the gauge that says number of transactions across the network. We're going to watch that rise as they fire transactions at the network. So guys, if you can begin. So they're saying that they've got transaction generators 1 to 3 firing at cells 1 to 3, and you can see now the transactions are coming into the network at somewhere between 575 and 600 and something transactions a second. And we've got across the network, now we've got 3,000 transactions a second across the network, and about 1,000 transactions a second on average per cell. So now they're going to keep going. We're at 5,000 transactions a second across the network, 6,000 transactions a second. Almost 10,000 transactions a second. 12,000 transactions a second. Guys, can we switch pages on the right-hand side? $16,000 transactions a second. So we've already exceeded what we showed you yesterday in the video. Now we're at 19,000 transactions a second. So, or almost. Now let's take a look at inside one of these cells, and we're going to collect. They're not arriving at us in real time. We have to collect those transactions and those blocks. So now you're looking at those blocks arriving. So let's maybe open up one of those blocks. And here you can see the block hash and the time that the block was created and the sequence number of that block. You can close that. Let's look at the transactions, one of those transactions. And so here in green, you can see the transaction hash. In blue, you're looking at the account or the customer. And then you're looking at the signature at the bottom, right? Let's close that. And now let's continue loading the network up with more TPS. Can we move to the next page, guys? On the right-hand side? Maybe the next page, yeah. $22,000 transactions a second. $25,000 transactions a second, with 1,000 transactions a second on average per cell. 28,000, 29,000, 30,000, 31,000. 35,000. We'll take a look at another cell. So here you can see we're collecting the blocks and the transactions. That's the block hash of that particular block. And this is the details of that particular transaction. So you can see it's all happening legitimately in real time. Now we're moving quickly in the interest of time here. So 41,500 transactions a second. 44,000 transactions a second. Now, I have to tell you, these are 44,000 transactions a second arriving into the network every single second. This isn't some, simulation. These are real. Well, there are transactions that we've made up, but they are actual, real transactions arriving into the network. We've just reached 50,000 transactions a second. These are 50,000 transactions a second, real transactions, 52,000. Guys, can you open up some of the blocks? And let's just watch some of these transactions arrive for a moment. Yeah, sorry, the cells, I mean. Let's just watch some of these arriving. You can see in the bottom there in the transaction details and in the blocks, these are dropping in because these are transactions arriving every second. Now we're collecting them from the network. And you can see their hashes and such. Okay, so let's move back to the gauge for a second, and let's stay here if you don't mind. So let's kind of talk about this for a minute. So some will say, okay, well, they're only achieving 1,000 transactions a second per cell, and that's true, right? There are other networks like Zilliqa that achieve more transactions per second across their blockchain. Obviously, they have a very large blockchain with many shards to be able to achieve that, and I commend them for their efforts. Right? We're showing something much more reasonable per cell, but the fact that we have a network that has many cells, and all of these cells are isolated from one another. You'll notice that as we load up cells, right, what we don't have any degradation or decline in the performance of any particular cell, right? They're all staying at 1,000 transactions a second, even as we're adding transactions to more cells, right? Okay, that's wonderful. So the network has 50,000 transactions a second, and each cell has 1,000 transactions a second. But what can you do with this? So we're going to show you how this is useful. So can we bring up the consistent hashing, if you don't mind? Maybe move it to the other side of the screen, on the left-hand side. Yeah, I want to see the gauge on the right, guys, if you don't mind. The gauge is on the right, and then this on the left. Okay, so what we're showing you here is we're showing you the mechanism with which we find data across this network, and it's a algorithm called consistent hashing. Right? We didn't invent it. You guys can Google it, but we're using it, right? And also, by the way, while I'm speaking, you guys are watching that the network is continuing to receive and process more than 50,000 transactions a second. So how does this work, and what is this, and what are we looking at? How is this useful? Okay, so let's say that a company wants to build a really high TPS application, right? In my video yesterday, I gave you the example of Uber, right? So Uber or Airbnb or anybody really needs to build software. They want to build that software quickly, right? Maybe they'll use our platform to do it. Maybe they won't, right? But they want to be able to run that software at really, really high TPS because they have a lot of customers, right? So how can they take advantage of the Sparkster network? The key here is that what they're able to do is they're able to distribute their records across the network. And when they're distributing their records across the network, they're taking advantage of the network's high throughput. An example that I mentioned yesterday in the video is that if you put all of your customers whose first name begins with A in cell 1, and I'm talking about Uber's customers, and all of Uber's customers whose name begins with B in cell 2, and so forth for all the different letters in different cells, you'd have an application that's running at 26,000 transactions a second. That's fundamentally why the Sparkster platform and the Sparkster Decentralized Network makes sense to the world. Why the world needs the Sparkster Decentralized Cloud, right? But we're going to actually show you how does this work. How do you find a record when it's distributed across different cells. So let's say we have a customer whose name is James. Guys, if you could type in James, and we're going to try and locate James. So what we do is we take James and we hash the word James using the algorithm, and we get a number. Now it's approximately an 8-digit number, but we've taken the first 4 digits of that. So we get a number which is 5258 after we hash the word James. Now, 5,258 is more than 4,000, right? If you look at that diagram, it's more than 4,000. So we know that it's going to be on the next cell, which is cell 3. And that's how we can locate it. So what is this diagram on the right-hand side? Well, what consistent hashing does is it puts a solution space around a circle, right? So let's say 0 to 10,000 is your solution space, is your space. You make a circle of 0 to 10,000. So the point at the top would be both 0 and 10,000. And you take your cells and distribute them equally across that circle, which is what we've done here. So 10,000 divided by 6, you've got 2,000 each. So cell 1 has an address of 2,000 on the circle. Cell 2 has an address of 4,000 on the cell. Now, when we put an input like James, and we hash the word James, and we take the first four characters, the first 4 numbers, which is 5258, we know that 5258 is more than 4,000, but less than 6,000. Therefore, we can identify that James, his data is located on cell 3. Now let's try Sarah. So if we hash Sarah, we get 2,630. So 2,630 is more than 2,000, but less than 4,000, so we know it's on cell 2. Let's try another one, maybe Laura. So Laura is 6,276, which is more than cell 3, so we know it's located on cell 4. This is fundamentally how a company can take advantage of the Sparkster Decentralized Cloud, right? Because they're able to distribute their customers across the network and take it, and therefore their platform, their application is benefiting from the high levels of TPS. Now, just to confirm, right, let's go back and put James back in. Let's say somebody else wants to look up James's data. There's no centralized database here. It's an algorithm, right? There's no centralization of any kind. We can see, again, we get 5258 for James. So we know he's located on cell 3, right? So this is a big deal, right? It means that anybody, any device, for example, let's say that you've got Uber running on your own phone and you want to find your own trip history, right? When you hash your own record, it will know where your data is located on our network, which cell it's located on, so that your phone knows which cell to go and talk to go and retrieve your data. Now, I mentioned to you that because we're a specialized blockchain that focuses just on solving the problem of allowing people to build software and run software on a decentralized network, that we benefit from certain things that other people don't. The payment industry doesn't benefit from. We have natural isolation boundaries, right? Now, each of these cells, they're isolated from one another. That means they don't share a distributed hash table. It means that they're completely separate blockchains that have nothing to do with one another, right? They don't know about each other. That's how we get the high throughput, right? There's no magic here. So what's the benefit here? Well, let me ask you a question. Does James ever need to see Sarah's trip history? No. Does Sarah ever need to see Laura's trip history? Or does Laura ever need to see Sarah or James's trip history? They don't, right? They do not need to see each other's trip history or the homes they've stayed at in Airbnb. In fact, they don't want to see each other's histories. And because of that, right, because we have these natural isolation boundaries, we're able to distribute those records across the network and never synchronize them. And that's why this is not sharding, right? This is nothing like sharding. In fact, this is actually isolation, what's otherwise known as a shared nothing architecture, right? Cool. So I hope you guys are dropping in your questions. What I do want to do is I want to address one other thing very quickly, and then we're going to move on to questions. I know that we're nearing the end of our session here. So bear with me. This is my first time doing this. All right. Hopefully you guys are seeing my screen. Is that right? Okay, good. One more thing. The Menti code for our session is 990734. Okay, so I got asked in our group, right? What can you really build with this? You know, how far can you go? I don't want to spend too much time on this, right? What can you really build in the Sparkster platform? I want to address this question really, really quickly, right? So we have a partnership with a major corporation, a company called ARM Holdings. We're specifically working with the division called Embed. And what Embed do is they make, microprocessors, microcontrollers. And those microcontrollers are used for IoT devices, amongst other things. So for example, you might find a microcontroller in your, when you want to control the windshield wipers on your car, for example, right? They're doing the job of controlling those and things like that. So these have now made their way into IoT devices. Now we've worked with them and we've built a solution that allows people to build IoT devices without writing any code in plain English. We're talking about devices, guys, right? And it's so simple to use that there's a video on our website of kids building IoT devices in plain English, right? I recommend you guys check that out. Another example of what someone's doing with our platform, there's a guy in the northwest of England. He built a robotic bar. And, from his phone, he orders a drink, like a martini or whatever. And what happens is this cup travels across like a little moving escalator, if you will. And this device squirts out different ingredients into a drink to make a martini or whatever drink he's selected, right? He built the entire product without writing any code in the Sparkster platform. In fact, using the same solution we built for ARM. We have a guy, in fact, in one of our own factories who's used our platform to build a production planning tool. And he's also used it to build a cost calculator for production costs. You've got overhead to calculate and things like that, and it gets kind of complicated. But what I actually want to show you today, very quickly, is something that we built for another partner of ours, a company called Labellium. Labellium is an IoT hardware manufacturer. And what we built for them was a surge-based smart parking or parking garage solution in our platform without writing any code. So how does this work? Well, you put in your destination of where you want to look for a parking reservation. And then it tells you where there's availability, what the availability is like, whether it's low, it's medium, it's high. And then based on that, based on how much availability there is, you get charged a different price. So when there's high availability, you get charged a low price. And when there's low availability, you get charged a high price. How is this built? Here, you're looking at it. These are the blocks behind the scenes. And I just want to take a moment and explain some of these. Right? So when this check availability button is clicked, we're going to do something. These are physical devices, right? These are physical IoT devices that are connected to an IoT gateway called Meshlium. Labellium is the manufacturer of this gateway. And we're basically asking this Meshlium gateway, are all of your devices available? And if all of them are available, we set the price to be pretty low and we set the availability to be high. Now we can drag and drop any logic, but the logic that we've dragged in here is if all of them are not available, are some of them are available, right? If some of them are available, bump up that price from $1 or £1 per reservation to $5 a reservation, right? And then reach out to the device and find out which location is available for me to make a reservation. Now, what's the key here, right? What are you looking at? Well, the thing that's important here is what you're not looking at. You're not looking at how do I talk to this device. You're not looking at the thousands of lines of code that would go into making this a reality behind the scenes. And so when we say that Sparkster enables people to build software without writing any code, 100 times faster than traditional software development, how that's the case is because it's just like this. You're focused on outcomes. You're not focused on how does any of this stuff work behind the scenes. And as I said, this is stuff that we've proven, that we've got partnerships for, that people are, using in reality. In fact, a few weeks ago, I had a conversation with a parking garage, a company that has a lot of parking structures in Dubai. And they were using this, they're not using this, they want to use this because their management want the power to be able to control the rules of pricing, right? So when people ask, what can you build with this? What are the capabilities? Well, what I would say to you is the capabilities are immense, right? And you can build phenomenal things, right? So that being said, developers, we see them as part of this community. They can build blocks. Developers can, they can contribute by being able to write the code behind new blocks that they invent and so forth. They can integrate other APIs and make those available in the marketplace for you guys to use and so forth. We see this as a partnership between the developers developers that are already traditional developers and guys that don't know how to code but want to be able to build software, want to be able to bring their ideas to life. Okay, so the last thing from me before we open this up to questions, I want to talk about the crowd sale because there's been a lot of questions about this. And like I said, a lot of new people have joined us in the last week, so I want to cover this. So we had an AMA with the community and we took feedback. And what we designed is we designed a system, with taking into consideration your feedback on how we, how we make this fair to people. We avoid gas wars, we avoid whitelisting wars, and so forth. Excuse me. And also, how we make sure that the people that end up holding our tokens are people that are committed to the long term, right? So we said, okay, what we would do is sorry, the other thing that people were upset about is that in other high demand ICOs, people got very small allocations, right? Like, 0.4, 0.5 ETH. And that was everybody. Everybody got tiny allocations, right? So we said, okay, well, how do we overcome this problem? So we thought, okay, look, those people that are willing to make effort, they should be rewarded with larger allocations. But not everybody wants to make allocation. Not everybody wants to make effort, and that's fine, right? So what we would do is we would allocate 25% of our crowd sale to a lottery system that you can sign up for inside of a whitelist. It's a lottery so that we avoid a whitelist war, right? But because you're making minimal effort, right, the size of your contribution is minimal, it's 0.4 ETH. But those that really do want to make effort and help us get the word out, especially amongst the people that are outside the ICO space, right? And help us create awareness of what Sparkster is trying to do in the mainstream crypto world. If you can help us do that, then we'll reward you with higher allocations. So our proof of love system, you basically perform activities, you share our product, you maybe go to Reddit, you talk to you introduce some people, you introduce your friends, maybe you talk to someone on Telegram. You don't need to have a social following, right? You don't need to have a social following for Reddit. You don't need to have a social following to have a conversation with someone or in a group about Sparkster and introduce people to Sparkster. And by doing that, you get rewarded with points. Now, the people that earn the most points, the top 5,000, get rewarded with guaranteed allocation between 1 ETH and 10 ETH, right? So significantly larger allocations. But everybody who participates that earns the bronze reward, the bronze level, which is very easy to achieve, everybody who participates that gets to bronze will get tokens from our bounty program. So everybody wins for participating. If you participate, you get tokens, right? You may not get allocation if you're not in the top 5,000, but you will get tokens if you get to the bronze level. So this is how we think it's fair. We're rewarding everybody for taking some action. All right. So that being said, let's open up this to questions. So the first question is, how is Sparkster different to Plasma and sharding? Let me give you the Menti code again, guys. It's 990734. 990734. The first question I have here is, how is Sparkster any different to Plasma and sharding? Well, I'm not familiar personally with Plasma, but as I discussed with sharding, ultimately sharding results in a singular distributed hash table. And that's the fundamental limitation of sharding, right? Is because everything somehow has to make its way into this singular distributed hash table, right? You end up with this bottleneck, which is that one DHT. Because we've got isolated cells, our shared nothing architecture, we don't have a centralized distributed hash table. In fact, none of the distributed hash tables between cells know about one another, and that's how we're different. All right, next question. Some people are saying you can achieve high TPS in a closed environment. Is the 15K TPS transferable to the real world? Yes, we believe it absolutely is transferable to the real world because the size of these transactions is very, very small. You see, we took the knowledge that we learned from IoT, right? These network-constrained, memory-constrained devices that are out there in the real world, right? And when we were working on IoT, we had to build, we looked at different technologies. And so we were able to squeeze down the size of the data that's transmitting between the device and our platform to 200 bytes. And essentially, we've brought that over. And because of that, we're able to, we don't think that there's going to be a real problem here in achieving high levels of throughput in the real world. Absolutely. Can you be faster than Zilliqa? I think we are faster than Zilliqa from a network perspective. Can we be faster than Zilliqa on an individual cell basis? Well, that's not the problem we're trying to solve today. But I'll tell you that in the future, right, will we be upgrading from what we're using today for 1,000 transactions a second and follow our peers to get to many, 2, 3, 4,000 transactions a second or wherever the world is at that point in time? Absolutely, right? Why wouldn't we lend on the research and the efforts of our peers like Zilliqa and QuarkChain and EOS, and maybe even Ethereum when they come out with sharding, and get to a place where yes, we can raise the TPS of a cell from 1,000 TPS to 2,500 or beyond, wherever we might be in the future, right? But that's not the problem we're focused on solving today. The problem we're focused on solving today is how do we get millions of transactions a second, build a decentralized cloud. And while we're working on that problem, our peers like Zilliqa, QuarkChain, EOS, Ethereum are working on how do you raise the TPS per blockchain. We'll learn from those efforts going forward. Brazil is using consistent hashing with their internal blockchain. They're also using an algorithm to replicate the data. How is Sparkster going to replicate the data to make it persistent? Okay, so the cell itself is a blockchain, right? So you've got many participants. You've got many participants within a cell. And so because the cell is, the data is in effect on many of the machines inside of a cell, you do have, high levels of reliability with that data, right? We're not limiting the number of people that can participate in a particular cell. When we release the mainnet here, you can join as many as you want. But you can join any cell you want, right? Is it true that I can build the software, integrate with existing blockchains, or use Sparkster blockchain only using your tool? Good question. Okay, so is it true that I can build software, integrate with existing blockchains? So let's talk about, yes, you can build software and integrate with existing blockchains. That is true. Today, we've got, and I mean today, right now, We've got integration with Ethereum and IOTA, right? IOTA actually was a very early partner of ours. Well, not really a partner, but we were working with some people at the IOTA organization. So, so today you can interact with the Ethereum network. You can interact with the IOTA network, right? Are you limited to Sparkster's blockchain using our tools? No, you're not limited to our blockchain, right? Are you limited to building for our blockchain with our tools? Today, you're limited to using our tools. In the future, you won't be, right? Let's move on. When is Sparkster going to hit exchanges? I'm not able to comment on exchanges, as you might appreciate, but it is something that we're actively working on. How can you guarantee that blockchain is safe and will not suffer from attacks or divulge sensitive information? Well, there are no guarantees to anything, right? But and even even Bitcoin will tell you that if you have more than a 51% attack, well, there's no guarantees there either. How do we guarantee it? Or how do we facilitate it, right? So there's kind of two approaches we take. You've got to think about the incentives here. And the incentives for attacking our network are very, very, very little. There's no accounts in terms of accounts there's no wallets. There's no money on the network. There's no, there's nothing to steal. When you're going to be looking at that data is not going to have personally identifiable information that's accessible. The data is going to be encrypted and so forth. So from that perspective, there's no incentives, right? So do we need a network that's as large? Do we need to have as many participants in a cell that's as large as Ethereum or so forth, right? I don't think we need it as large, but like I said, we think a lot of people are going to join this and join our network. There will be a lot of participants in each cell, and so from that perspective, we do believe that there will be safety. I know it's not a priority right now, but when will the website and everything be redesigned? Guys, this is a good question. So the speed and growth of our ICO, our token sale, was not something that anybody had anticipated. It certainly wasn't something that we had anticipated. We thought we had 2 months to put together our pre-sale, right? We had to close our pre-sale in 2 days. Right, when I arrived back from Amsterdam, we were done. Right, so we are on an extremely accelerated time frame, one that none of us anticipated, and frankly, not one that we were not prepared for. So we're slammed, right? Putting together this demo for you today that showed 50,000 transactions a second. This has taken us all week to get right. We had to nail it today. So this is something we will do after the tokens are released, but it is something we will do. What are some of your new partnerships? The only official partnerships that we have today are ARM and Labellium. We have a new strategic partnership that we're announcing soon, but I can't speak about it yet because we're not ready to announce. But there is a new, I think, a major strategic partnership that's soon to be announced. You should have hackathons to see what people build with Sparkster. That's an interesting point. Whenever we go to an expo, we've exhibited at IoT Solutions World Congress in Barcelona. We've exhibited at Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. We exhibited at Blockchain Expo in London. We exhibited at the London Crypto Show not so long ago. We're exhibiting again, in fact, in June in Amsterdam at the Blockchain Expo. We always get told, wow, I really want to use what you're doing in our hackathon, right? We think that that's one of the key use cases, actually. When we were at Mobile World Congress, we were approached by Nestle. We were approached by the head of innovations at Nestle. And I spoke to him personally, and he said to me, one of our greatest problems is that we can't innovate fast enough. And specifically, he was referring to the fact that when they come up with something, it takes too long for the software developers to build it, right? He said he wanted to use our product inside of their organization to be able to get stuff out really quickly to customers and test it, right? And if it works, they'll put a lot more effort behind using it. Behind building it properly, maybe. Maybe in our platform, maybe not. I mean, that's their prerogative. But yes, I see hackathons and those sorts of things as a paramount use case for our product. So thank you for that. How can you be so brave to do live demos during AMA? Why are you so confident? No one is doing demos during AMAs. Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that. I don't know if I'm brave. I'm confident. I believe in what we've built. You know, I wouldn't be here with my face on camera showing it to you unless I believed with every fiber of my being that this is, this is the real deal, right? Like what we're showing you is real. We're showing you actual blockchains, right? So because because it's functional and I have seen it function so many times, I'm confident showing it to you, right? That's all it is. I think a lot of other blockchain projects, they don't have years in the making. They don't have $8 million of investment in building stuff before they come to market. That's kind of been our approach. We built, then we came. Ian Bellina really believes in this project. Why? What did you demo to him? I demoed to him essentially what I demoed to you guys last week. What I demoed on his channel last week is what I demoed to him, except it worked very well. You say there will be no money on the blockchain, so how will Sparks coins be integrated to the blockchain? Great question. We have a specialized cell that handles payments, and that cell will be, obviously much larger, many more participants to make that particular cell safe, right? But the rest of the network will be isolated from the cell that handles payments. Good question. Good catch. When will your code go open source? It'll go, well, the blockchain part will be open sourced, and it'll be open sourced when we're comfortable that we're not vulnerable to someone taking advantage of us from a security perspective. Remember, we're pre-testnet, guys. What we showed you today, this is not testnet, we're pre-testnet, right? Is 10 million TPS possible? Can Sparkster break in to the top 10 market cap? So I'm not offering investment advice here. This is not an investment. You guys are buying Sparkster tokens. But let's talk about the first question. Is 10 million TPS really possible? Oh, absolutely. We've gone from 6,500 TPS to over 50,000 TPS in 1 week. And you know what we did? We just added nodes. That's all we did. We just added nodes. The throughput performance of our network is just dependent on the number of participants. The more participants, the more cells, the more the TPS, right? We're showing you that in real life. We're showing that in real time, right? So yes, it's absolutely possible. So the thing is, right, like theoretically, there's no limit to the TPS. It could be 100 million TPS. But I think 10 million is reasonable, because when I calculate the number of people that would contribute their devices based on a percentage of the population and so forth, right? I arrive at the number that's in the neighborhood of 10 million. Now, it might be 8 million, it might be 25 million, but it's in the neighborhood of 10 million. What are you going to do with all the money? That's a good question. So we have a chart on the website that kind of shows what we're going to do with all the money. But to give you a very quick summary, we are taking a page out of the book of Mark Benioff, a company. He wrote a book called Behind the Cloud. Mark Benioff, for those who don't know, he is the CEO of Salesforce, a guy that I've admired for a long time. And in his book, Behind the Cloud, he talks about how companies should be dedicating, 25% of their revenues to marketing and sales and 15% of their revenues to ongoing research and development. So the vast majority of the money that we're collecting will be used to promote Sparkster and, you know, kind of tell the world about Sparkster, right? Now, remember, we are solving a different problem to other people. So people like Zilliqa, QuarkChain, and such, you know, you guys are probably their customers. They don't need to do marketing outside of the blockchain environment. For us, you know, our whole premise is that we're trying to bring the mainstream into using, you know, we're trying to facilitate mainstream adoption. We want the largest companies in the world to be using blockchain technology, right? And so we have to go out there and sell to those guys. We have to convince them that this stuff is real and it's reliable and it's, you know, it's safe and this is the real deal and it's going to save them money. So we're going to spend the money you've given us to go and convince them that they need to adopt the blockchain. Superman seems to be supportive of the project. Did you give him a demo? You know, we actually didn't give him a demo. He only saw Ian's demo. You know, I want to speak very quickly about that in a minute. But anyway, no, we didn't give him a demo, but we did have a call with him prior to Ian's demo. And yeah, he seemed very supportive. I was actually quite surprised when I spoke to him at how nice of a guy he is. He's pretty down to earth, actually. He's a very nice guy. Speaking of Ian's demo, you know, that obviously didn't go very well for us. You know, what I want to say about that is things go wrong in technology, especially when it's live, right? Elon Musk's rockets blow up. When Apple released facial recognition of their phone on their phone for the first time, it failed. Things go wrong sometimes, right? We had a bad day, but it shows you something. It shows you that it's real, right? It shows you that if it screws up and we can't get the transactions to flow correctly sometimes, it's the real deal, right? How can we help support the project? Thank you for this question. Guys, you can help us. You know, I want to see more people participate in Telegram, right? There's I don't know, 38,000 people or something like that in our Telegram group. I want to see more of you guys come out and ask your questions and talk to the community, talk to me. I'm in there quite a lot. That's one way. Another way is that you can tell others about what we're trying to do, and especially people in the mainstream community. It's good for us, right? It's good for you guys too, because they become token holders eventually, right? Is it also possible to contribute in the crowd sale when I already have contributed in the 20 ETH in the pre-sale? Yes, it is possible to contribute in the crowd sale if you're lucky enough to get allocation through the lottery, or if you do enough work to make it into the top 5,000. Nearing the end of the session, so we can't keep scrutinizing you live with questions. So yeah, well, I guess we'll wrap up there, huh? Thank you so much for your time, guys. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. You know, let's go out there and make this, you know, let's go and transform the world. We are, our tools, the Sparkster's platform and the blockchain enables you guys to bring your ideas to reality for the first time, especially those that don't know how to code, right? So let's go out there and make this, you know, make this the real deal. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys in Telegram soon.